Hello everyone and welcome back to Astrology with Lauren. I'm Lauren, and in this video we are going to be talking about the 5 major Ptolemaic aspects. So, the 5 major Ptolemaic aspects that were considered in traditional astrology are the conjunction, the sextile, the square, the trine, and the opposition. So I want to mention that there are some minor aspects that are considered in modern astrology, but we are not going to be discussing those in this video. We're going to stick with the 5 traditional aspects. I think, honestly, personally, they are the most important, and I want to just try and grasp those first. So the 5 aspects are broken up into 2 easier aspects and positive aspects, and then 2 that are harder and more challenging. The 5th aspect, which is the conjunction, is neutral, and it kind of just depends on the planets that are involved in this aspect. So let's go ahead and dive into the conjunction. I think it's the easiest to understand. A conjunction simply takes place when 2 planets share the same degree or within a couple degrees of each other of the same sign. So, for example, we will work with, let's say, 10 degrees of Aries. Let's say you have Venus at 10 degrees of Aries, and then you have Jupiter at 12 degrees of Aries. Those 2 planets would be in a conjunction. They are sharing the same space with each other, and they are forced to cooperate and work together, and their characteristics, their personalities almost get merged. And so for Venus and Jupiter, those are both of our benefic planets. And so in this instance, that impact would be a more positive impact for you. Whereas if it was a conjunction between, say, Mars and Saturn, that might feel more tense, and it might feel a little more negative to you. So again, the conjunction kind of just depends on the 2 planets that you're working with. It's neither negative nor positive. It's not hard or easy. It really just depends on the 2 planets that are involved. So I want to move on to the sextile. The sextile takes place when 2 planets sit 60 degrees apart from one another. So let's continue with that Venus at 10 degrees of Aries. And let's say we have another planet, we'll continue to use Jupiter, at 10 degrees of Gemini. These 2 planets sit 60 degrees apart from one another, and they are in sextile. We can also do the math if you're looking at your own chart and you see that Venus is at 10 degrees of Aries. If we jump 30 degrees to 10 degrees of Taurus, and then another 30 degrees, 10 degrees of Gemini, we see that is 60 degrees apart. It's easier to visualize if you have your chart in front of you. You can kind of see how the 2 planets are 60 degrees apart, within like 55 to 65 degrees apart. The sextile is one of our easier aspects. It describes some of our strengths, but it's not necessarily a strength that you have immediate access to. You may have to do a little work in order to access this strength that is involved with the sextile, but it's generally an easier aspect. Those 2 planets are not going to be in tension with one another, and they're going to offer you a strength in terms of who you are and your personality. So moving on to the square, this is our first hard aspect. The square is exactly what it sounds like. It is 90 degrees, 2 planets that are 90 degrees apart. So again, if we are working with the 10 degrees Venus, Aries, the Venus at 10 degrees Aries, there would be a square if there was another planet at or around 10 degrees of Cancer. And again, you can do that same math. So if you're at 10 degrees of Aries, you can jump to 10 degrees Taurus, 10 degrees Gemini, and 10 degrees of Cancer. And you can see there that's 30 plus 30 plus 30, which is 90 degrees away. The square, again, is a tense aspect. That is an aspect that causes tension. The planets are not necessarily getting along, and it's usually a challenge. You're forced to work through some sort of issue or life obstacle, but the beautiful thing about both the square and the opposition, the 2 hard aspects, is that those challenges and that tension, it makes you who you are, and it gives you the motivation and drive to work harder. And at the end of the day, you are stronger for those aspects. So I have quite a bit of squares and I love my squares. They are uncomfortable, but it's exactly the push that I need to change. It makes me think of the saying about diamonds and how, diamonds are created under pressure, sort of the same idea. But that is the square. Again, similar with the conjunction, the square can be more tense depending on the two aspects that are, the two planets that are in the square. If it were Venus and Jupiter, those are both of the benefics. It might not be as tense of a square as it would be if it were, again, like Mars-Saturn or Mars-Pluto, something along those lines. But moving on to the trine again represents the triangle, so that's 120 degrees apart. And the signs involved in the trine always share the same element. So that's usually an easy way for me to remember if two planets are in a trine. So again, we have Aries, 10 degrees of Aries where Venus sits, would be in a trine with 10 degrees of Leo. That is our next fire sign. So Aries is a fire sign, Leo is a fire sign. Those two would make a trine. This is the more harmonious, that's the word I was looking for, aspect of the two easier aspects. The trine, there's no work involved in gaining those strengths. Whereas with the sextile, you have to work a little bit for it and then you get the rewards. With the trine, that's what comes naturally to you. That is your natural strength. There is no hard work involved in accessing that strength. So Venus, 10 degrees Aries, is in a trine with, say, the moon at 10 degrees Leo. Those two planets are working harmoniously, and there's likely going to be a really natural and easy way of expressing your emotions and being in relationship with other people. That said, the trine is something that we tend to take advantage of. So the easier aspects, the easier it is for us to acknowledge, the easier it is for us to work with that energy, the more we take advantage of it. We don't tend to recognize those strengths. We don't tend to see those strengths, and we tend to take advantage of it. So the trine is one of our strengths for sure, but it can be something that we don't readily notice because it has come so easy to us. The last aspect that I want to talk about is the opposition. So this is the hardest of the hard aspects. The square, not as tense as the opposition. I mean, you think about an opposition as literally two people on different sides of one spectrum, and that is exactly what an opposition is. So for example, if we are continuing to use that Venus at 10 degrees of Aries, we would have an opposition with a planet that sat at 10 degrees of Libra. So we could say Mars. Let's put Mars at the opposite end in Libra. These two planets, they're not agreeing at all. They're on two opposite ends of the spectrum. Again, you have Aries, that's the self. You have Libra, that's the other. And they're having a hard time seeing eye to eye. But similarly to the square, this tension creates growth for us. So because we are forced with these two really opposing energies, at some point in our life, we tend to find a balance between the two. And, we work with so long overindulging in the Aries, then overindulging in the Libra, back and forth until we finally find a middle ground that really works for us. So you can see here that the aspects definitely flavor the chart. Just as much as your placements are really important, understanding, that Venus and Aries at 10 degrees alone, understanding that can be really helpful in understanding yourself. But these aspects between the planets, especially if they are close aspects within a couple degrees of each other, they're so important and they help flavor the chart. They help flavor who we are. So I hope this gives you guys a little bit of understanding of what the major aspects are, what an aspect is, what it means to have these aspects, and just a greater understanding of your aspects, who you are,